Before we get started, this video is the next chapter of our journey through the original trilogy of George Romero's Of the Dead films. Last time we covered Night, which is an all-time classic that still holds up shockingly well considering how it was made and when. And this time we're going over the first sequel, a film that took this new, fresh idea and exploded it like never seen before. Because while Night laid the groundwork for what a zombie film is, Dawn is the one that kinda took it into overdrive. Yeah, this is gonna be a big job, but don't worry, we got this, man. We got this by the ass.
Granddad was a priest in Trinidad. He used to tell us, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, this is another movie that doesn't really need an introduction. It's kind of the zombie movie, hands down. When people think of the genre, usually they have something in mind that's at the very least heavily inspired by Dawn of the Dead. Now you might get confused by this statement. Night was the one that kicked the whole thing off. Why is Dawn the one getting all the credit? Well, that simply comes down to sheer fame. Night of the Living Dead, while highly influential in its success for Romero and his company, was still regarded as a cult film. Operating off a budget that was a little over $1 million in today money, they brought home around $30 million, which for 1968 means they basically got $280 million. A very good haul for a low-budget indie film. It brought Romero a lot of prestige, rocketing him into a very successful career in filmmaking, following up Night of the Living Dead with titles like Season of the Witch, Amusement Park, The Crazies, Martin, the latter two actually being two of his more underrated films. Still, Romero wanted to do a few other projects for trying to tackle something like a sequel to Night, scared of being typecast as essentially a quack horror director with a single idea. Still, he would eventually float back to zombies. I mean, it didn't help a lot of his films after Night weren't exactly that impressive. There's Always Vanilla is just kind of a meandering, preachy mess that felt like it didn't really know what it wanted to do, which is actually kind of fitting considering the story. Still, the point is it was met with a resounding Season of the Witch has similar problems. Also not really being too sure what I wanted to say and feeling more like a stretching your limbs out kind of movie, because, I mean, the whole metaphor is just a very on-the-nose and blunt portrayal of domestic violence, so, you know, it's basically just an abused wife movie. I mean, the supernatural element doesn't even really matter considering the ending, but whatever, it's not the point. The point is that Romero wanted to try different ideas and refine himself as a director, which is admirable, but eventually he would drift back to horror. Amusement Park is a pretty disturbing look at things like elder abuse and even some implications of dementia and Alzheimer's, and Martin is a vampire movie, which I put in quotes because anyone who's seen it can already tell you that's not exactly accurate. It's more of a serial killer story. But the interesting one is The Crazies, another film about a contagion causing the downfall of civilization, this time being about a biological weapon that caused people to become psychotic and violent being unleashed on a small town. Famously, this movie got a remake in the 2010s that's actually not too bad. It's pretty fun. I mean, I like it. Still, Romero clearly still had a fascination with apocalypse stories, of the world falling apart and people turning into animals. And one day, when he was hanging out with a friend who worked for a development company, he was invited out to the Monroeville Mall just outside of Pittsburgh. Yep, this was the late 70s, the dawn of the shopping mall, of these massive bazaars that could cover any need a man could have. Food, clothes, furniture, even guns in some places. America back in the day was a magical place. This trip piqued Romero's interest, seeing the shoppers that go around the mall and the idea of a one-stop shop place that could cover everyone's needs. What would happen if someone needed to go to the mall? Like, if the whole world fell apart? Yeah, you already know where this is going. Romero got the idea of a zombie movie in a shopping mall. Nowadays, it's actually a cliche, but this was the birthplace of that very idea. Romero immediately got to work on the script and even had his buddy Dario Argento help out, a prolific Italian director that wanted to collaborate with him. And this partnership birthed something that's still beloved even now. Dawn of the Dead right from the get-go is a far different beast from Night. Night of the Living Dead was made in 1968, a sort of bookend to the 60s that had these almost golly gee whiz type characters be hit with something way more nihilistic and grim. The reality of the zombie apocalypse. It was people who are not used to anarchy and wholesale violence suddenly thrown into a world where anything less is a death sentence. Well, the 70s were a very different time period. This was post-Vietnam, post-gas crisis, the Jimmy Carter age. To put it simply, people didn't really give a shit about Leave It to Beaver lifestyles anymore. You had swaths of guys coming home who were hardened by the war, and they really couldn't give a fuck about much of anything anymore, which is the massive vibe in Dawn of the Dead. Night of the Living Dead was about small-town people trying to work together to solve a problem they have no idea how bad really is. Dawn of the Dead is basically the exact opposite of the spectrum. On every level, these were bitter, cynical people that were well aware of the stakes, but they're also smart, which we'll get into later. All you have to know for now is that Dawn still has a lot of the misanthropic black humor Night has, but more apparent and downright absurdist at times, which fits for a few reasons. For one, Argento weaved that sort of psychedelic grim humor into his movies, mixing a decidedly 70s feel into this genre that only really kicked off in the 60s, sort of modernizing it and giving it a new identity. Dawn of the Dead is essentially an Italian giallo film made by an American, which explains a lot of the feel and tone. You see, Dawn of the Dead can feel like a fever dream more than once. I mean, the editing can be downright schizophrenic at times, jumping around from shot to shot, sometimes even having a hard cut that can come right after an actor finishes a single sentence. It's a movie that's all around chaotic, and it's a case where a very simple story is told in a way that's unique and pretty unorthodox. The Italian influence seeps deep into the roots. I mean, the blood's bright red, reminiscent of Argento style, where you have very stark color contrasts that pop out and can almost look neon at times. The soundtrack is a mixture of prog rock and funk, mainly handled by an Italian band called Goblin, and the actual plot of the movie is pretty thin. It's much more of a character-focused story. Plot points are handled more so by decisions the protagonists make more than larger issues. Really, if you boil down the plot synopsis of Dawn of the Dead, you can maybe get a paragraph, if that. A bunch of people run off to a shopping mall to escape a growing zombie Armageddon. They fortify the mall and eventually realize they're trapped inside. Eventually, the mall falls. Yeah, it's very thin. Granted, this is ignoring large swaths of details. Like I said, this movie's defined by characters, and the characters are genuinely interesting. That bite and cynicism I mentioned earlier is clear right from the get-go. The cast is more outwardly misanthropic and violent than the Night group, which were a bunch of scared townsfolk waiting for someone to come save them. The Dawn of the Dead cast is mainly 4 people. Steven, played by David Emig, a guy working for a local news station that can smell that the issue of the undead is not going away anytime soon. A bit meek and cowardly, but a quick learner and able to use his skills as a helicopter pilot to be useful for the group. He's protective of Fran, who's his girlfriend, and takes a while to really trust the others in the group, which is mutual. Fran, played by Galen Ross, the girlfriend of Steven that also worked at the news station as a contributor. While also being a tad cowardly and unsure what to do, she understands the larger picture more than anyone, able to tell when it's time to jump before everyone else, which comes up more than once. Peter, played by the great Ken Forhey, a member of Philadelphia SWAT that deserts his unit with Roger once they tell that the undead are starting to outnumber the living. A clever and capable kind of guy that's not scared to draw guns when the situation calls for it, being one of the 2 heavy hitters of the group. Roger, played by Scott Reiniger, the other SWAT member that deserts with Peter, far more level-headed and outwardly smart, though burned out, seeing the constant failure of the government to contain the zombies and losing faith they'll really win. That's the brass tacks of the cast, and you can tell from this alone how different this already is to Night of the Living Dead. These characters are well aware the situation is not getting any better, and they're not going to get themselves killed waiting for rescue. Instead, they decide to forge their own road and risk things on their terms. And of course, you can't mention this movie without talking about Tom Savini, who not only plays a character towards the end, but also served as the special effects and makeup coordinator. This guy is a whole rabbit hole to talk about, so here's the simple explanation. Dude's a legend. Full stop. He's worked on countless horror films and franchises, and his work only got better and better, to the point that movies would be banned or censored because his ability to make convincing gore was too good. His big inspiration stems from his time in Vietnam as a photojournalist, even being quoted as saying if it didn't remind him of Nam, it wasn't good enough. And he got along fantastically with George Romero, the 2 quickly becoming friends and working together for God knows how long. So that means that gore in Dawn of the Dead is a whole different beast from Night, right? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense the movie could actually have gore compared to Night, which left things much more understated and subtle, both due to censorship regulations and budget. I mean, the buckets of blood you expect from a zombie genre wasn't even there, and the gore was a few pieces of burned meat and a single scene of a zombie playing with intestines. Yeah, Dawn ups the ante, but still relatively downplayed compared to what would come later. Mainly because they wanted to focus on a large scale, and this was Savini's second major job after Martin, which is where he met Romero. So they didn't go shooting for the stars just yet. They were close, but Dawn definitely shows its age in more than a few places compared to the rest of the trilogy, specifically because it shoots so far and wide. The zombies look pretty cheesy, just being gray-skinned people who shamble around. They still look too human, nowhere near the peak of what the genre was capable of. Even the zombies at night look gnarlier in comparison. darker eyes, some had wounds on them, and they could genuinely be creepy. It's a case where the black and white was able to hide a lot of the issues and let your brain do half the work for them. And Day's zombies, well, they're just incredible to look at. Easily Savini's best work that I still think he has not been able to beat. But Dawn is this weird middle ground where the movie is gnarlier than what came before, but it hits the valley of just being okay. That's not to say the gore in the movie's bad. It has some of the best headshots in the zombie movie, and some bloodbaths in this movie still hold up. It's just that this is a sort of growing pains movie. Romero and his crew were shaking off their indie roots and aiming for a larger playing field, which was both a good thing and a bad thing. A good thing in the sense that Romero had more resources to chip away at his big grand epic of a zombie movie that he was wanting to make ever since he made Night, and a bad thing in the sense that he was running into more issues with the suits due to his grand plan. Romero was a very artist-driven kind of guy. He had his vision and he did not like to compromise with it. Hell, this is going to be very important when we talk about Day of the Dead. But for Dawn, it basically amounts to the film being rated X due to violence, which was actually a common thing with the Of the Dead trilogy. Now, technically they released unrated, but that was because they knew if they sent it in to be rated, they would get X ratings. So unrated is basically in practice acting like an X rating, since it meant that they were restricted on what theaters could show them, and also they didn't really have the best luck with video stores. Yeah, on paper, all three of these films were X-rated. You technically got to watch adult films, which for Dawn and Night might seem a tad tame. Day, it 100% makes sense there, because some gore scenes in that movie are still gnarly as fuck. But Dawn and Night? When people hear about a movie being X-rated for violence, they probably think of Brain Dead, which, yeah, that movie, that makes sense. Even though that movie also was not X-rated, in fact was just R-rated, but it came out way later, and there is an unrated cut, which had a lot more of the gore scenes, so it's kind of a weird technicality thing. Movie ratings make no sense. But this was all due to the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, an organization that really fucked with horror films in the 70s and the 80s. Romero butt heads with this group often because this was a guy that liked his gore and did not like to compromise on his movies. And instead of ever cutting gore scenes or bending the knee, he would take the X rating, knowing that word of mouth would help make up the loss on advertising, since an X means you can't advertise it like a usual movie. Hell, for a time, video stores would even refuse to hold it. Still, Romero's gambles usually worked. Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead were explosive hits. Oh, Dawn was so influential that it's referenced more often than Night or Day. Resident Evil and Dead Rising are both quoted as taking massive influence from Dawn of the Dead. And pretty much any zombie media that has a shopping mall in it references this more than once. Not even mentioning how Dawn of the Dead is the only one of the original trilogy that got a remake that's more well known than the original, and a lot of people do seem to like it. Now obviously some think it sucks complete ass, but we're going to talk about it later. Still, you get the idea. Dawn of the Dead is probably the most flawed of the original trilogy, but it's got the most heart and charm partially because of that. It's a sort of kitchen sink movie. Whatever idea Romero and his crew wanted to do, they find a way to include it. From motorcycle gangs, rednecks hunting zombies, apartment complexes flooding with the dead, anything and everything. But weirdly enough, it all works. In fact, one of the best parts of Dawn is how it manages to flow from each set piece in a way that feels very natural, and the characters are extremely likable and enjoyable to watch. There's not really a single bad role in the movie. Even the completely over-the-top assholes are fun to watch specifically because they're over-the-top assholes. So to go any further involves spoilers, so here's a warning. Once again, weird to do this for a movie that's 50 years old, but just covering bases here. It's better to be safe than sorry. So sit down and watch this movie and come back, you won't regret it. Yeah, Dawn of the Dead is a very different feel from Night of the Living Dead, which is obvious from the very beginning. Night of the Living Dead is about the panic of the first wave. People are running around looking for shelter and scrambling for answers. Dawn is the next stage, when the initial panic wears off and the reality of the situation kicks in. The dead aren't going away, and it seems like things are getting worse. The film opens up on a news station desperately trying to keep up with the worsening tensions, and everyone can already tell the powder keg is about to explode. Some employees are already jumping ship. Fran and Steven are coming up with their plan to basically ditch the station with the helicopter and go, well, anywhere. Yeah, they didn't really have a long-term plan. All they know is that staying around doing nothing is a death sentence. At the same time, Peter and Roger are helping out their SWAT team trying to clear out an apartment building. The residents were revealed to be holding on to dead bodies, which is a very big no-no right now. So SWAT and the military are breaking in with extreme prejudice, and the mission turns into a shit show. The mass hysteria and psychosis among their own guys is bad enough for Roger and Peter to go AWOL, realizing that the dead are simply outpacing the living. The living are falling into despair, tribal thinking, and sheer stupidity. They were fucked compared to this uncaring enemy that just seems to take more ground every day, which is a big part of the theme to Dawn of the Dead. A lot of people think the movie comments on consumerism and shopping mall culture, which isn't wrong, it's just it was unintentional by Romero. He did think about the obsession people at the time had with malls and how so much of life revolved around consuming product and being excited for next product. It's just the bigger theme of Dawn of the Dead is actually more simple than that, and that is thinking. You see, a large aspect of Dawn of the Dead is contrasting people who can step back and think in a crisis versus people who just react. There's a reason I said Dawn is embodied by the word coordination, because that's a massive part of the film and characters. The ability to coordinate and strategize. It's why the shootout at the apartment ends in disaster, because the team leader stops thinking, and honestly you could debate if he ever did in the first place, and just runs around like a lunatic shooting anything in sight. The entire reason the cast goes AWOL is because they're the only people who see the writing on the wall, that the rest of humanity is too busy freaking out to understand the depth of the situation. There were news segments still debating the ethics of destroying the brains of corpses to prevent resurrection. Zombies were flooding towns, and people were still asking if putting a bullet in their head was ethical. The cast knows things are bad, so bad that they need an escape plan sooner rather than later, so they all meet up and go out on their own, since it was better to die on your own terms than because someone else's stupidity got you killed. I think the best aspect of Dawn of the Dead's beginning is how it managed to nail the feeling of things falling apart. You really do understand the world is tearing away at the seams. Bit by bit, society's burning to cinders, and it's not fast. It is agonizingly slow. Hell, when the group meet up to escape the city, they run into a group of bandits. At first, they think the bandits are gonna rob them, but it's revealed they're cops. They also abandoned their post and are going for a boat. None of the characters are taking their real job seriously anymore, because the world's fucked. What's the point of being a police officer in a world where the general public's just gonna eat you alive? So the group fly around trying to find shelter as they see the world slowly consumed by the dead. The amount of zombies seem to be growing, even with vigilante groups working with the military to hunt them. A fun dark humor segment where you see rednecks capping zombies, almost enjoying the apocalypse. But that feeling of dread never goes away. Yeah, they're able to kill these zombies, but how many more are slowly shambling behind them? How long before they run out of bullets? Before they realize the dead aren't stopping? It's the larger picture thinking that none of the side characters really seem capable of understanding. The zombies in Dawn really feel like this existential threat, not because a single one is really that dangerous, they're still slow and stupid, but because they never seem to run out of numbers. No matter how many you shoot in the head, there's always 10 more waiting behind them. They also never explain how the dead rose up in Dawn. Yeah, you can assume it's the same reason as in Night of the Living Dead, but they never actually clarify that. In fact, there's some subtle nods to the idea it could just be the literal end of days, biblical Armageddon. Of course, you don't see anything as blatant as the 4 horsemen riding around or a portal to hell. This all kept solely to maybe a line or two, and still very much in the vein of undisclosed phenomenon. It's safe to say you can just view it like the Plague and I Am Legend, which was a massive influence on Night of the Living Dead. The why doesn't really matter. It's just happening, and you gotta figure out how to stay alive. The gang wanders the countryside for a bit, and you see the dynamic of the group laid out very clearly. Peter and Roger run the show, the experienced SWAT members that know how to fight and have very clear no bullshit attitudes. Steven is kind of the straggler. He has the skills as a pilot, but that's all he can really do. He's struggling to keep up with them, and is emasculated more than once whenever he fucks up. They essentially treat him as a spaz they have to keep alive rather than an equal, and Fran is just there. I'm not even kidding, that is actually her character. She's Steven's girlfriend and is well aware that she's expected to sit back and do nothing, something that does infuriate her since she's actually the deeper thinker of the group. She's treated as a third wheel and it does piss her off, especially since she understands that the situation with the zombies is just not gonna stop. The old world is dead.
It's really all over, isn't it?
Eventually, the group stumbles into the Monroeville Mall, their sanctuary for the rest of the movie. Now, the mall is probably the most famous aspect of Dawn of the Dead. When you hear the title, you think about this mall, which is funny because they don't even find the place until a little over a quarter of the way through, and they don't even get the mall until over halfway through the runtime. Yeah, a large chunk of Dawn of the Dead is about clearing out the mall and making it safe to live in the first place. The movie is essentially one long mission to take this place and secure it, and they go into detail on this plan. It's actually kind of nuts. Each step is laid out and performed. First, they scout the place out and get a feel for the situation, see how many zombies are inside, entryways they could take, pathways back to the security room they're hiding out in. This all just see what's inside the mall. Then the next plan involves taking supplies. Food, medicine, tools, anything useful they could use up in the security room, even finding a way to crawl through the vents to get to certain parts of the mall that don't involve pushing past zombies. After they lay out their pathways, they begin the next stage of their plan: sneak outside to a group of loading trucks and park them in front of the entrances, because then there's no way for the zombies to barge inside. Even if the doors are shatterproof, having an entire wall of hungry corpses pressing against them could rip the frame out. With the trucks, it means there's no leverage they can use to tear down the doors, which is actually a detail that really shows why Dawn of the Dead stands out among a lot of different zombie movies. The characters in this are very smart. This is probably one of the most competent groups in zombie media. The characters are very capable and know how to plan things out, and their plans just make sense. Sure, they're risky, but the whole point is they're taking this risk for long-term security, a short-term chance of death, and if it works, they can sit in comfort for who knows how long, because then they have a whole shopping mall to themselves. The movie is well aware of the single guy with a rifle philosophy. A single guy in the right spot with a rifle can hold a place for a very long time. The zombies are slow and dumb, with only brief moments of memory, such as the Buddhist zombie able to put together that the group came from the stairwell leading up to the security room, and they're still warded off by fire. If you know what you're doing, this is a pretty easy mission, so long as you don't let yourself get overrun. Be quick and be effective. Like I said earlier, you can immediately see the difference in mindset with Dawn. Knight's group probably never picked up a gun before the apocalypse, or at least nothing beyond hunting rabbits or plinking cans. Dawn's crew feel like experienced soldiers. They're quick to shoot and have enough common sense that you can buy a lot of their decisions. A lot of zombie movies tend to have issues where it dumbs characters down in order for sequences to happen. Hell, even Romero was guilty of this with his more modern titles. But Dawn managed to nail that balance between genuinely intelligent and likable characters and having the zombies feel like an actual threat. Because even though the cast are smart and know how to handle themselves, they can still fuck up. Steven starts the movie being pretty incompetent, not being a great shot and having to show his ability to Peter and Roger before they really respect him. Later on, he gets tight with them, but the point is he has to prove himself. Fran stays away from a lot of the violence beyond covering the guys with a rifle during the truck plan, because she knows her own capabilities. Hell, she didn't even want to leave the security room during the scouting mission. She also shows she's able to learn and adjust to this new world, because she recognized her own incompetence and refused to let it be a problem. Even later demanding Steven teach her how to fly because she knows having a single pilot's a bad idea. If he dies, they're trapped with no way out. The cast in Dawn is one of the highlights to the movie. You actually like these guys. They're badass and you never want to see them get eaten because they make some dumbass move that you hate them for. Any mistake they make is completely believable and fully heat-of-the-moment situations. Like when Peter and Roger let the zombies get too close when they try to get into a store because they didn't have a lot of ammo and knew firing off rounds attracted more of them. An understandable way of thinking, but it causes Peter and Roger to get stuck, and Roger loses his rifle. And during the truck plan, Roger starts to flake, getting swept up in the adrenaline and no longer thinking, getting sloppier and less focused, making him lose his gun bag, which they need to go back for, and even Peter calls him out.
You better screw your head on.
Yeah, come on, let's go!
I mean it, man!
Saying he needs to get his shit together if they're gonna do this, because if Roger fucks up, that could kill both of them. Then Roger gets bit, twice. Yeah, he completely fucks up. Poor guy gets munched on. To his credit, he just slaps some tourniquets on and gets back to the task at hand now that his head's cleared up because it's kinda hitting him, oh god, what the fuck did I just let happen? And they do manage to get the trucks in place. But yeah, Roger's bit, and remember, Romero made the bite rule, so Roger is screwed. Still, there's more work to be done before he can think about licking that revolver of his. Peter and Steven sneak into the gun store, which was actually filmed in a separate location from the mall, a gun store called Firearms Unlimited in Pittsburgh, and they grab a fucking arsenal. Their problem of new zombies flooding in to replace the old ones is basically solved, but there's still a few steps to do. And they have way more bullets to throw around, so might as well get started on the clearing work too. They get the zombies on the second floor down to the lobby, lock the main doors from the inside, and then kill them all. It's a good plan, and it works. Even though Roger got a finger in the bite wound for his effort, poor bastard, he just had a really bad day. Still, they did it. They took them all. It's theirs. They can sit back and relax. Except for Roger. Yeah, he's infected. To their credit, they let the poor guy enjoy what little time he has left, knowing everyone was safe and comfortable, but still, the inevitable comes up. He dies, and Peter has to put him down. And this causes a noticeable shift in the movie. It went from this big celebration to realizing the truth. The mall is a prison. More zombies are slowly converging on their location. Sure, they can't get in, but that also means they can't get out. The helicopter was running on fumes when they found the place. If anything happened, they don't have a lot of options to bounce. And Fran is the only one who really sees it, which is only made worse because, as it turns out, she's pregnant. Yeah, it's not great. Steven is completely swept up in the idea of the mall as their sanctuary. I mean, it has everything they need and they worked hard to earn it. Roger died so they could have it, and he just can't abandon it. Yeah, you definitely see a flavoring of the mall culture criticism that people see with Dawn of the Dead. Now, like I said, this is another case of Romero not really seeing it until people mentioned it later, but Dawn feels way more intentional than the supposed race commentary in Night. There are pretty on-the-nose lines about the idea in the movie.
We've got everything we need right here.
So it's a weird case of Romero subconsciously slipping the idea in, because the guy was pretty misanthropic about the world at large and cynical, while he was mainly just writing it as a fun zombie thriller. The main idea of Dawn of the Dead is about humanity's ability to think. That would be the only thing that could save us, but it shows different factors in how our thinking can be muddled or distracted. Panic, adrenaline, despair, moral lines that are too awful to consider, and pride. All these different things that could keep us from keeping our minds clear in a crisis. It just so happens to also include consumerism as one of those distractions. The mall doesn't just have all the survival supplies you need, it also has entertainment and comfort. You wouldn't just be safe in the mall, you'd be comfortable, compared to camping out in the woods or in a military base. For this setting, the mall is a castle. A big one with silk sheets and big titty wenches with pitchers of premium wine. Anyone would run for it. Anyone would run for it. Yeah, this is an important detail. The protagonist stumbled into the mall by sheer chance and immediately knew how valuable it could be. So the obvious question after they take it is, how do they keep it? Not just from zombies, but other people, because they're a problem too. A bandit gang spots Fran and Steven during one of their flight lessons, tailing them back to the mall and scouting the place out, taking note of the trucks and realizing the mall is the gold mine they want as well, and they come barging in at full force, tearing down the defenses the group set up and flooding the mall with zombies and bandits. Now, it's not clear what the bandits' plan actually was. The way they talk, you think they want to take them all for themselves, but in practice, they mainly smash the place up and loot it. And honestly, I don't think the bandits know either. They represent the opposite extreme to our group. The protagonists are smart, detailed, and clever. The bandits just react, and they don't seem to give a fuck about anything beyond short-term fun. Some of their own guys get eaten alive right in front of them, and they don't care. Hell, some of the most famous deaths in the movie come from the bandits acting like idiots, like the guy who gets killed because he took a blood pressure test with zombies right next to him. On paper, this is completely idiotic. Why the hell would you do that? Yeah, obviously it's a funny scene, but it does say a lot about the characters. These are total nihilists that just want to burn the place to the ground because it was there, because someone else had it and they didn't. Even when Steven opened fires on them, the bandits don't get too worked up. The way this guy is talking, you'd think Steven was just batting at them with a broom to get off his lawn.
Oh man, what the hell are you doing playing around? Someone's upstairs shooting at me.
The protagonists were also very careful with their shots. If they fired on a zombie, they made sure to aim for the head, because they didn't have a lot of ammo and needed to conserve resources. The only times they really wasted bullets was to get a zombie away from them, or it was Fran or Steven shooting, who weren't as good of a shot as Roger or Peter. The bandits are spraying bullets all over the place and treating them like firecrackers. They're shooting because they like the gunfire. Now the funny part is that the ending gunfight was something the gang was trying to avoid. Peter wanted to avoid a firefight because he knew they were outnumbered and the zombies were the bigger threat long term. But Steven was so pissed off at their sanctuary being violated that he took the shot and blew the powder keg.
It's ours. We took it.
And of course, I have to mention how the leader of the bandits is the machete-wielding Blades, played by Tom Savini. Even though he's a murderous psychopath, you gotta love the guy. You can tell he's having boatloads of fun. Yeah, the ending is pure chaos. Bandits, zombies, and the remaining protagonists running around like chickens trying to catch or avoid each other. And Steven gets fucked up during this. Shot, bitten multiple times, the poor guy does not die well. The bandits in the group are fighting this war, but the dead don't care. It's all meat to them. And yeah, Steven turns, which is a problem. Not just because that's another protagonist that's in the grave, but those hints of the dead having a memory are very much still there. Able to remember where they put up the fake wall in front of the stairwell and leading a horde up to the security room. Also, you gotta give David Emmett credit. I mean, his performance as the Steven zombie is genuinely pretty cool. It looks like he broke an ankle or even his whole foot when he fell, and he's able to relate that in the performance. A lot of fun little salties with him. It's really cool stuff. Still, the mall is completely fallen. Peter makes it back to Fran and tells her to just go. This is actually where the different versions of the film come into play, because yeah, this movie has a few different versions. If you remember the beginning of the video, I mentioned how Dario Argento worked on the movie with Romero. While the two had some disagreements on how the film should play out, Romero liked dark, ironic humor inspired by the horror comics he read as a kid. The blood's so bright red because it was reminiscent to how the blood would look in something like Creepshow. A lot of the joke scenes and dark humor were Romero's idea. It's one of the reasons he loved Shaun of the Dead so much, being that mixture of comedy and horror that he wanted to do himself for a while, while Argento wanted a more grounded, grim tone, since a lot of his films sort of followed that living nightmare vibe that was popular with giallo movies. They could have humor, in fact there are jokes that stay between both versions, but it never took away from the fact these stories are horrifying, so Romero and Argento agreed on a compromise. Romero would handle the American version of the film and Argento had control over the European. Hell, the Italian version would actually receive a completely different title, just called Zombie, which would actually spawn into its own franchise over in Italy. Now the two versions are still working with the same footage. In fact, this is kind of one of the shining examples of just how drastic a movie can feel depending on how it's edited. But the original idea for the ending would have been, grim. Like, very grim. They never actually shot any of this, but it's well known at this point that the original ending involved Peter shooting himself. Peter shoots himself to avoid being eaten by the Horde, essentially feeding himself to them to distract them long enough for Fran to get away. And Fran, well, she has a similar idea. Realizing she's completely alone and heavily pregnant, a death sentence in this situation, she decides those helicopter propellers could use a kiss. Yeah, she shoves her head in fucking helicopter propellers, turning her head into paint. Everyone dead. No one walks out of that mall. Much like the ending to Night of the Living Dead, a very bitter way to end this story. Now, like I said, all of this was unused and not actually in the movie. This was just the original idea. The real ending is a lot more, not quite hopeful, but at least it's less bleak. Peter still tells Fran to go, and it does hint that he's gonna shoot himself, putting the gun to his head, but then he decides, man, fuck that, and fights his way out of the security room and back to the roof, meeting up with Fran, who waits for him, and the two fly off. Low on fuel and no real destination in mind. So a happier ending, but still nuanced and with a good amount of dread mixed into the batch. Yeah, they solved the short-term problem, but where the hell do they go? Granted, the unused ending sounded like it could have been awesome, but theatrical works. They even use a similar model of Fran's head for the shotgun kill during the apartment raid, but all around it feels like an attempt at just doing the ending of Night again. The theatrical ending is a lot more fitting just due to the fact that it's basically ending it where it began. The remaining characters flying in the helicopter with no idea where their destination in mind is. You even have this montage of the zombies pouring back into the mall. It all ends right back where it started, the mall flooded with the dead. But still, Dawn of the Dead is a fantastic movie. A tad dated? Yeah. A tad cheesy in parts? Definitely. But the good far outweighs any moments where you can clearly see the effects were lower budget, or the acting is hokey. The movie is still one hell of a ride, something that is mandatory watching for horror fans, and especially fans of zombies. It's just fucking awesome, full stop. And of course, you have an iconic film from the 70s that helped define a genre. Yep, remake time. Just like Night of the Living Dead, this movie got trial by fire with the remake gods. Coming out in 2004, directed by Zack Snyder and written by James Gunn, which is a duo that modern audiences probably think sounds like a fever dream. Still, this was both of their first big projects. It was Zack's directorial debut and Gunn's first real writing project that took off. Since he did stuff like Tromeo and Juliet, as he was a Troma affiliate early in his career, the live-action Scooby-Doo, and the specials. Movies that weren't really anything that shook the world up. I mean, the first live-action Scooby-Doo movie built up a reputation over time. A lot of people remember watching it and built up a fan base as they got older. But Dawn of the Dead was the first movie that really blew up for him. So you have a director who's all about style and slick visuals teaming up with a writer who's known for grim, fucked up humor. And they're tackling one of the most beloved zombie films in history. How'd it go? It's complicated. The remake Dawn of the Dead is a mixed bag. You can throw a dart into a crowd of people who saw this movie and get 100 different opinions. Some people fucking despise this, and others say it was genuinely underrated. Some even saying it's the best work Snyder and Gunn ever put out. Before I give my take, I'll lay some immediate differences between the remake and the original. For one, the zombies are completely different this go around. They're far gnarlier and faster. Yeah, you have running zombies. They sprint towards anyone in sight and all around feel more savage and violent. The gore is nasty at times, to the point you really should just watch the director's cut to get the full feel, even if it has some issues, because if you watch the theatrical, it can feel a tad toned down in some weird places. But yeah, director's cut kind of just gives you all of it. This is one of those points that comes down to personal preference. Some people love running zombies, others think it's a total betrayal, taking the existential threat of just never-ending hordes slowly pushing in to 28 days later. I'm cool with any flavor of zombies as long as it's fun, so it's not a big deal for me personally. Another difference is that the story is only really following the brass tacks of the original. A bunch of survivors stumble into a shopping mall during the zombie apocalypse. They hide inside. That's really the only similarities plot-wise, which is fine. Better to just do your own thing with the concept than chase the coattails of the original. There's also a lot more characters. The original movie only had 4 protagonists: Peter, Roger, Fran, and Steven. Everyone else was side characters. Not a lot by any means. The cast for the 2004 film is higher, mainly to have more bodies descend into the meat grinder, which is fine. Zombie movies are fun when there's plenty of gore, but the cast is nowhere near as strong as the original. The characters can be remarkably dumb at times, and some characters are just flat out forgettable. You do have standouts. Ving Rhames as basically Ving Rhames. Yeah, just kind of playing himself in the movie. I mean, in the actual story, he's a cop trying to find his brother, but if you've seen him in anything else, you know what you're getting. But he's awesome, so that's okay. Sarah Polley is Anna Clark, who's meant to be the actual protagonist, a nurse who ends up seeing the beginning of the apocalypse. She's definitely a good character, very no bullshit kind of person that's easily smarter than a lot of the others, to the point that you could probably plop her in the original and it wouldn't cause too many issues. There's like one scene where she does something dumb, and that's because they had to establish a rule in the story, which everyone already knew, but in-universe they didn't, so whatever. It felt cheap, but point is, they had to establish the bite rule. Ty Burrell as Steve Marcus, a sarcastic jackass that's always making quips and observations about how they're all gonna die. The character's annoying, but personally, I felt like he managed to hit the balance between intentionally annoying and wanting to chuck him off a roof to the horde. It helps that a lot of the other characters do call him out on his bullshit. Also, he's basically playing the same character he does in Modern Family, so I like to headcanon this is Phil after the apocalypse. Michael Kelly as CJ, a tyrannical security guard that starts off as an antagonist, but eventually redeems himself and helps the group. He's another total asshole, but his league's more badass than Steve, willing to fight and actually able to back up a lot of his braggadocious nature. He's got some of the better fights in the movie, and even some of the better quotes. You also have a smaller character that isn't given a lot of screen time in the actual movie, Andy, played by Bruce Bone. He's a highlight, ironically, because of the stuff that isn't in the film. Dawn of the Dead 2004 was given a pretty heavy marketing campaign when it was coming out. The studio was confident it would work, to the point they actually went out of their way to film smaller shorts to coincide with the home release of the film. Yeah, this was the era of DVD extras, a better time. Still, you had a number of different shorts, such as a compilation of all the news reports the characters watched through the film, along with some extra ones that show the situation devolving fast. It's actually kinda cool, but the important one is the Andy short film, known as The Lost Tape. This follows Andy's perspective during the story, locking himself in his gun store and making a tape in case he died as he documents his time during the zombie outbreak. That's where you get more of Andy's actual character, and yeah, he's actually a pretty great one. He's genuinely charming and is just kind of a likable dude. You feel bad for him as the situation worsens, and he ends up as an unintentional standout among the cast. This guy who in the actual movie is just some randy across the parking lot.
So I tossed the fucking Molotov. Not good. And for one thing, it don't do shit. It just burns for a while and leaves them all grilled and smelling like Jimmy Dean, and now I'm really fucking hungry.
And the rest of the cast, they exist. Yeah, they can be pretty generic. Not awful, some can be funny or have moments where they can be badass. I mean, I like the redneck guy, Tucker, he was cool. Andre's given a lot of screen time in the beginning, but quickly fades as his plot threads become a problem, which makes sense story-wise, but he just sort of vanishes and then he dies. CJ's other security guys are also just sort of there. One of them is just there to be obnoxious so you don't feel bad when he dies horribly, and the other one is only really there to be the love interest for another survivor. The cast all around feels bloated and not really as fleshed out as they could be. Some characters are great and memorable, but a lot tend to fall into, oh right, you were in this movie too. Remake Dawn has this issue where it seems to be at war with itself. It has genuine moments of brilliance, stacked up next to elements that feel contractually obligated. The introduction to the movie is fantastic. Everyone who's seen it remembers the intro. Anna waking up to the apocalypse, escaping her neighborhood, and then the man comes around montage during the opening credits. Solid stuff. This all works. But once the characters actually get the mall, it just sort of meanders. Like it ran out of ideas on where to go. It's very clear the opening and the ending in the movie were the most fleshed out parts. It's the middle they struggled with. They knew the characters would reach the mall and they knew they would lose it, but the why and how were the vague bits. They do pad out with some interesting side quests. Having to go down to the parking garage was a fun distraction, even if it's kind of dumb. Like, the emergency generator is in the parking garage, not like a basement or even maybe an upper floor. And of course it had to be filled with zombies. I mean, it's not completely unbelievable, but it feels like they realized they needed danger in the story again, so they just had them get attacked by zombies. Also, the zombie baby. Yeah, let's talk about it. So Andre is the guy I mentioned earlier, the one who sort of vanishes for a bit. Well, the context around that is a tad weird. His wife, who's heavily pregnant, gets bitten when they arrive at the mall. At this point in the story, none of the characters know how the infection works, so Andre assumes it's not a big deal. Well, it's eventually revealed that, yeah, bites turn you. So he hides his wife away from the group as she advances in infection and goes into labor, dying and turning, giving birth to their zombie baby daughter. The idea is disturbing, good splash of water to lead into the next act, when the characters realize how fucked their situation truly is, but there's a few logistical issues with this. For one, they make it clear bites can kill you pretty quick. It takes about a day for you to turn, if that, since the intro is all of the first day and they deal with 2 people who are bitten that turn. So how did Luda last that long with a bite? From the look of the wound, it's not that deep, so maybe that's why, but still a hazy shift in time for how infections work for this idea, because they do make it clear they've been in the mall for quite a while before she actually gives birth.
Honestly, it looks shallow enough to be a scratch rather than a bite, so that could explain the lengthy infection process. But other characters are shown to have shallow wounds from infected that still kill them within hours. It's hazy for the sake of the plot. Meanwhile, the original made it clear that Roger did not last very long after taking the mall. His death is what turned their time there from a celebration of finding shelter to realizing they were in a gilded cage.
Also, this is one of those cases where the theatrical cut works a bit better than the director's cut. Both versions play out pretty much the same. Norma, the trucker lady, stumbles into Andre, who has his wife bound, and she obviously doesn't like this. The two get into a rational discussion on the ethics of abortion, and then both are dead. The group, hearing the gunfire, rush in and find the scene, realizing the baby is a zombie, and they put it down. In the theatrical cut, you get the reveal, and they immediately do a cut to a gunshot, emphasizing it as more of a dark joke. Like the cast themselves are like, oh fuck that. The director's cut holds on the zombie baby for a bit. A little too long, like, we get it. A baby is a zombie. Ooh, it's so fucked up. Ooh. It's just a few beats too long. And of course we have to talk about the ending. The group, now realizing that the mall isn't as safe as they want it to be, plans to modify shuttle buses, hoping to push their way through the horde to the marina, where they'll take Steve's boat and sail to, well, anywhere but here. Not a terrible plan, having fortified vehicles is a good move. The problem comes from a certain character. Not Andy, he's a good guy. Hi Andy. His only problem is that he doesn't have food. In fact, there's sort of a grim irony with Andy. He has mountains of guns, but not a lot of supplies. The mall group has tons of food and water, but not a lot of guns. So the plan is to get Andy some food and pick him up, because he's a crack shot that can outfit the group with all the bang-bangs they can carry. All sounds solid. What is the issue then? The dog. The fucking dog. You see, when the group go to the parking garage, they find a dog, who they call Chips. And he's a cute little guy. I mean, if you don't like dogs, I'll shove you into that horde balls first. Still, one member of the group latches on to Chips. Nicole. She connects with him as a sort of coping mechanism after the death of her father, who was bitten before arriving to the mall and put down by Ving Rhames. Well, their plan to get Andy food is to send Chips down to the street with a care package, who will run to his store. A little dumb since it relies on Chips listening to orders, but the dog seems fine so far, and he actually does listen, so it's whatever. No, the problem comes in 2 forms. 1, Andy's bitten while getting Chips to the store. Something the group really should have clarified to Andy was a really bad thing, and he should avoid that at all costs, since he thinks nothing is wrong.
Damn, those bastards bite hard.
So Andy's dead. And 2, Nicole freaks the fuck out at Chips being out of the mall, and she steals the truck they used to get everyone there to drive straight to Andy's store to rescue him. Even though, and this is kind of a crucial detail, the zombies ignore the dog. Yeah, the zombies have no interest in attacking Chips, they only care about attacking other humans, so he was fine. Then she gets herself trapped in the store when Andy turns. She gets herself trapped in a gun store to save a dog that didn't even need to be saved. They were going to Andy's store anyway to raid it for guns. Chip was going to be fine. Nicole freaking out not only caused more of the plan to fall apart, but actively got people killed. Yeah, Andy was screwed from unrelated circumstances. That was on the rest of the group for not letting him know to avoid getting close to the infected, and that bites were fatal. But the gang now has to go to the gun store to save Nicole. They slip through the sewers to the street outside Andy's store and make it inside, putting him down and saving Nicole and Chips. But when they get back to the sewer, Tucker's jumped by zombies and breaks his legs. They try to drag him along, but he's quickly overwhelmed, so CJ kills him to avoid dying in agony. Nicole's dumbass got Tucker killed. That's on her, since if they used the buses or made more of a plan like what they wanted to do, They could have avoided these risks. People could have still died, but the point is, then it would have been more managed. It wouldn't be someone's fault, just bad luck or their own fuck up. And this was all to save a dog the zombies didn't care about. Great job, Nicole. Very cool. Still, the zombies have officially begun to assault the mall, barging into the sanctuary and forcing the survivors to use the fortified buses to fight their way out. Now, this movie has problems, but this sequence will never not be cool to me. It just tickles that part in my monkey brain that likes seeing big dumb action. Chainsawing through zombies, which you see a massive horde of, and fighting like hell just to move a few feet. You even have an admittedly cool sequence where CJ tosses out a propane tank and shoots it. Is it dumb? Oh hell yeah. But it's fun dumb. Just a high-octane zombie shootout. You can't make me hate this. The part that is just dumb is how they actually lose the buses. You see, one of the survivors, Glenn, takes a chainsaw to get a zombie off the side. Now, instead of sliding the blade out and revving the saw, the smart thing to do, and this isn't even talking about the fact he could have just taken a handgun and shot it, anything else, well, he decides to rev the saw in the bus. And when the bus shakes, he drops the saw right into this lady's shoulder. This is Monica, who is basically Steve's girlfriend, but groupie is probably the better term here. Well, this woman being sawed open causes the bus to crash, and now they lost one of their armored vehicles. Pretty dumb and contrived way to, up the stakes and axe these jabronis off, since now Glenn and Monica are both dead. Now, the way Steve dies makes sense and is fine. He tries to make a run for it and gets jumped by a zombie. It's simple, but it fits his character. He was a self-centered prick, and it was foreshadowed pretty blatantly what would happen to him earlier, like in bright neon lights.
I ever turn into one of those things? Do me a favor, blow my fucking head off.
Yeah, he basically goes, "If I ever turn into a zombie, please shoot me in the face, protagonist woman. Not like it would ever happen, but make sure you shoot me in the face if I ever become a zombie. I will give you a diagram of the T-spot to aim for in the very unlikely event that I, the annoying asshole side character, would ever become a zombie." Yeah, Steve's dead. They pilfer the keys off him, and they take the last bus down to the marina. The zombies swarm them, and CJ sacrifices himself to give the group enough time to make it to the boat, where it's revealed that Michael is also one of the pseudo-protagonists, but he is very, very boring. Don't worry, he's just kind of there. Also, he was basically Anna's love interest, and it doesn't matter. He reveals he was bitten. Yeah, he got bit after saving Anna after the bus crash. It would probably be a good idea to stay behind so, CJ didn't have to kill himself. Kind of a dick move, especially if you're gonna eat a bullet anyway, like 10 feet away from where CJ blew up the bus. And fuck it, movie's over. Yeah, the survivors all ride off on the boat, and it's happily ever after. Except they stumble into an island sometime later that's flooded with zombies. Yeah, the movie ends on a cliffhanger. You don't know whether or not everyone died, but fuck it. So the remake Dawn of the Dead is a very different beast from the original. The original is a slower-paced, thoughtful thriller that's all about human ingenuity and how our flaws cause our downfall, showing even these intelligent and patient people are capable of screwing up a perfect opportunity. Remake Dawn of the Dead is a much more contemporary zombie story. Characters' actions and emotions vary from scene to scene. Sometimes they're rational people able to take a step back and think. Other times, they don't even tell another character they're communicating with for possibly weeks that he should avoid being bitten. It's not a perfect movie by any means. As stated, some people do outright hate this version, but I can't fully hate it. It's a good drunk fun movie, perfect to flip on with friends and just watch some violence and gore. It won't make you think, but you'll point in soy face at the Tom Savini cameo, the Ken Foree cameo, the Scott Reiniger cameo. Yeah, it's a fun movie, not an amazing one. It still has some good bones to it. You can tell the guys who worked on this were capable of handling far larger projects like Gunn and Snyder would go on to do. And honestly, the problems can just come down to inexperience and difference in mindset. The original Dawn were a bunch of blue-collar guys, more than a few fresh home from Vietnam, wanting to make a zombie movie. They let that common sense way of thinking influence things in the story and the way they made the movie. The original movie has the characters park trucks in front of the doors of the mall so the zombies couldn't press against the frame and get inside, even locking it from the inside to make it that much harder. They made multiple pathways, carved out a hiding spot away from the main lobby, used the vents to their advantage. You can tell the characters really knew this place inside and out by the end. The remake group never feel like they reached that level. It feels like they just stuck to one part of the mall and called it a day, and then were shocked it ended up causing a massive security issue. Hell, they never even really solved the issue of the zombies getting into the parking garage. They just kill the ones that are chasing after them by setting them on fire, and then they're right back in the mall and it's like it never even happened. All we know is we're one guy down now. So it just never feels like they own the mall. Yeah, you have that montage where they're all having fun and, giggling and laughing with each other, but that's before even the parking garage. The original cast losing the mall feels like this massive blow to the gut. all this hard work and the sacrifice of Roger made pointless by these anarchistic punks who just wanted to smash up the place. It feels unfair, and you get why Steven was pissed off enough to start shooting, even when they knew it was a bad idea. The remake cast losing the mall just felt inevitable. They were gonna do something dumb to cause that mall to be exposed and the zombies to flood inside. It's just the actual reason why is really contrived. Of course, they had to lose the mall eventually. The whole point of Dawn of the Dead is that this supposed sanctuary is actually a cage, and the zombies would come in with enough time. But there's a way of doing it that does make you go, yep, saw that coming. Still, that's Dawn of the Dead. Both versions. I can recommend both, but for different reasons. The original is a phenomenal film that's still remembered to this day, with a tight script, good characters, and genuinely fun sequences. The actual technicals can be sloppy at times, but that's actually a point of endearment. The remake is sleeker and more put together on an actual technical level, but a lot was lost in translation, feeling like a watered-down version of the concept that doesn't really get why the original worked the way it did. It's fun, the action's fast-paced and bloody, but you're not really going to be chewing on the story or the characters. Granted, you don't need that to make a good zombie movie. You can have flat characters or a meh script so long as it's fun. But Remake Dawn just never feels like it hits the beats as it should. It can jump up, crash down, then go right back up again. It helps that the movie is not very long. It's around 100 minutes, and the pace is very quick. You only really have a few segments where nothing is happening. It understands to keep that pace consistent, so you don't really have time to think about what's happening. But compare that to a movie that was unafraid to take its time and show you characters that you're supposed to think about, and it's not really hard to say which one's actually the good one. But, all in all, they're still pretty damn fun. And I will bring this up since it's kind of another elephant in the room situation. The Monroeville Mall is sadly torn down. Yeah, despite it being a pretty popular tourist location due to the legacy of the film, the property was bought by new owners and torn down. Those new owners being the Walmart Corporation. No, I'm not kidding. Walmart bought the mall that was used to film Dawn of the Dead and tore it down. They plan to put another store in that location. Now, obviously, you could bring up the fact of they could have kept that mall open, maybe even turned it into a gimmick store where they could still run shops in it and aisles and things like that, and be able to sell it to people as, hey, this is the mall that Dawn of the Dead was filmed in. Or just turn it into an actual fucking museum for like George Romero and horror movies and things like that. Something that could make people happy, but no, it's just torn down and turned into another Walmart store. So, yeah, fuck you, Walmart. Now, at the time of this video, the mall is not scheduled to be demolished until April, but at the moment, it looks like there's basically no contest that's gonna happen. Hopefully, this is a part of the video that ages really badly, because it would be really cool to keep that mall up, but that's waiting on Christmas Miracle, and unfortunately, this year's not exactly known for them. One more bitter pill to swallow before 2026. This year has lasted so long. I want it to be over. But anyway, definitely check out Dawn of the Dead. It's another case of you can watch the original movie on YouTube. It seems like the copyright holders don't really give a shit. And I mean, yeah, you can also check out the remake as well. It's at least a decent enough companion piece, though nowhere near as good as the original. But do you know what else is pretty good? Gamer subs, use code TAL at checkout. Use the code. This year has sucked major ass. Use the code. I hate this year. Use the code. Bring back Ozzy, you motherfuckers. Use the code. Use the code. But now we've officially covered Dawn of the Dead. Tune in next time to when we cover Day of the Dead, which looks like it's going to be the first video to introduce us into the new year, which is decently fitting. I swear to God, I'm doing the best I can to keep up. But yeah, see you guys.
Fuck you!
Hey, loser. Do you want a shirt? Do you want a t-shirt? I have shirts now. Look in the description for a link to a t-shirt you can buy. If you don't buy the t-shirt, I'll kill your family. If you don't buy the t-shirt, I'll poison your dog. If you don't buy the t-shirt, you're going to be the only person in town that does not have a t-shirt. Everyone's going to look at you funny. There's going to be social consequences to not having one of these t-shirts. I'm now making express threats of violence against you if you do not buy my t-shirt. I will call the police, tell them how you're not buying my shirt. They're going to plant crack in your house, and they're going to arrest you and then beat you up in a jail cell. Buy my shirt.